We've had big questions across all of training camp for the number 11 team in the country, specifically who's their starting center, who's their starting nickel, and we finally have an answer to those questions, Anthony Totri, in the form of a first depth chart for the Arizona State Sun Devils led by Kenny Dillingham. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the full depth chart. You might have to squint, you might have to zoom in, but we'll start where we've been talking for a really long time, Totri, and that is that offensive line. Ben Coleman, as you were saying earlier this week, is going to be getting the starting nod at center with Jamedo Abigbo there at left guard, Josh Atkins at left tackle, Kyle Scott at right guard, and Maxi Hanachor at right tackle. But it all starts with the all-conference offensive lineman, Ben Coleman, moving positions. We're 3 days away, and we have our answer.
Yeah, we know what this offensive line is going to look like. Again, we have been saying that for the last about week at this point. We put in the Die Hard Discord before that depth chart was announced and before Kenny Dillingham announced it on Saturday. Wade Helton does appear to be that backup center for the Sun Devils, the redshirt freshman, Iowa State transfer. But that offensive line's been pretty consistent with what we've seen so far through fall camp and a lot of spring ball as well, something that sticks out. Outside of Ben Coleman being named the starting center when it relates to this offensive line is you just look at the size of that offensive line. Josh Atkins, 6'4", 310, actually the lightest offensive lineman that you're going to see of the five for the Sun Devils starting the year. Your left guard, Jamedo Abigbo, 6'4", 325. Ben Coleman, the shortest at 6'3", but 320 pounds. Kyle Scott at right guard is massive at 6'5", 330 pounds. Then your right tackle, Max Hanachor, also 6'6", 330 pounds. This is an offensive line that can compete in this conference and beyond because now they have the sheer size to do so.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see how they're going to be competing, and they're going to have a different type of job than last year when it was a lot of run blocking for Cam Scadaboo, and they'll still, have to block for Kyson and Raleek and for Kanye, but it's just different now where you assume that Arizona State's going to be airing the ball out a little bit more via Sam Levitt to Jordan Tyson and the other wide receivers, which we can go through here in just a second, but it's going to be a big challenge for this offensive line. I think that's going to really determine the ceiling of this team is how well can they protect their star player. And Ben Coleman at center, I mean, there is going to be a lot on him. I don't think there will be more eyes on any individual player, at least for the sickos, than Ben Coleman week 1 against NAU on Saturday because he's playing a position he's never played before, but his ceiling on the offensive line is a literal all-conference offensive lineman. So if he can bring that over a la Leaf Fautanu last year, like that's going to be a really massive deal for this team. On the offense, before we jump over to the defense, obviously Sam Levitt is your starter. For running backs, Kyson Brown and Raleek Brown getting the two starting nods with Kanye Udo. They are coming in at second string. Wide receivers, of course, Jordan Tyson, and then Malik McClain, Jalen Moss, and Jaren Hamilton getting starting nods with Harry Hassman, Noble Johnson, Derek Eusebio, and Corey Butler Jr. there in the two deep for those. For the rest of the offense and the offensive weapons, what stood out to you?
I think the fact that this year they listed 4 starting wide receivers and 2 starting tight ends, in the sense that Arizona State will be experimenting, obviously, with some base formations here. You will see them spread out defenses in 2025, even as early against NAU, and when they do so, you will see 4 very talented wide receivers in Jordan Tyson, Malik McClain, Jalen Moss, and Jaren Hamilton. That is a problem for any secondary, not just in non-con, but when you get to the Big 12 as well. Also love seeing some of those younger guys get nods as backups. Corey Butler Jr. as a true freshman. Of course, Derek Eusebio, who we talked a lot about on Tuesday's show. And then, of course, Harry Hassman in there as well. Also, with the running backs, before we move on to the defense, Kyson and Raleek, again, that has been a lot of the conversation of these two being your starting running back. But just because Kanye Udo was listed as a quote-unquote backup or listed as the second string behind Kyson Brown, don't get it twisted. You're going to see Kanye Udo. I think he's going to score a ton of touchdowns for this team, just given kind of where they're going to use him in personnel situations, down and distance, etc. You will see more than just Kyson and Raleek, not just against NAU, but really the entire year.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you have somebody who rushed over 1,000 yards in college football last year.
As a
They're
backup.
not technically your starter going into week one. You mentioned the tight ends, Shaman Kamari, and then Cameron Harpool all getting the quote-unquote starting nods there. AJ Ia, the only other tight end there listed on the offense. I think go over to the defense. I think there's some really interesting things, but I think there are a couple positions here that aren't on every single depth chart. It's the Sparky, which is Justin Watley, and the Devil, which is Boogie Wilson. Do you want to explain to maybe just some non-ASU fans what exactly those positions mean on this depth chart?
I think when we're talking the Sparky position and the Devil position for this Arizona State defense, similar to what we were talking about offensively when it came to some of those formations where you have 4 wide receivers or you've got 2 running backs listed or you've got 2 tight ends, kind of goes the same way with this defense. There are going to be certain formations that don't look traditional, that will utilize a Sparky position, that will utilize a Devil position, and that's where you'll have a guy in Boogie Wilson on the back end at that Devil spot. And then when we're talking about the Sparky spot up front on that defensive line, you're talking about Justin Watley or Elijah O'Neal. In that sense, again, Boogie Wilson on the back end is that transfer from Washington State. Justin Watley and Elijah O'Neal have both now been here at least a season. So it's kind of what we've been seeing at camp in terms of some of these guys getting a lot of reps in practice. It's something that I've really tried to hammer home in the Die Hard Discord as well as on the shows when I'm talking about this defense is you will see rotations. And I think there are some people that when I've been saying it for such a long time now that maybe it's like they're just not taking me seriously. You're going to see a lot of rotation on this defense, even at positions like safety where you have a guy in Xavier Alford, and opposite him, you've got Miles Rouser. You're going to see Boogie Wilson in there. Up front on that D-line, yes, you got Clayton Smith. Yes, you got Prince Dorba. You will see Justin Watley and Elijah O'Neal. And then even at the linebacker spot, I think this is probably the biggest surprise for people on defense is that your starters are listed as oars. Your Keyshawn Elliott and your Jordan Crooks, yes, those are your starting linebackers, but they are oars with Tate Romney and, of course, Cyrus Fiaseu as well. You will see a good chunk of rotation at that linebacker spot and in this defense in general, just because you have so many returners. Yeah,
and obviously another position that we need to talk about along on the offensive side, it's been Ben Coleman, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to start center? It's been who's going to start at nickel. You have an or it's Montana Warren or Kendrick Breedlove. Of course, Montana been in the system for 3 years, now got some burn a lot last season, especially in some big moments. And then Kendrick Breedlove transferring it over from Purdue. Technically, Montana getting that quote-unquote starting nod because he is the first name listed there and Kendrick is the or. But like you mentioned, expect a healthy dose of both of them cycling in and out. And then maybe as the season goes on, one might kind of rise above the other, but Montana also listed as a backup for Xavier Alford as well. So he's probably going to be jumping back and forth whenever Kendrick is going to be starting
100%.
at that nickel position.
100%. And this is, again, something that we've been talking about on the show really for the last couple of weeks now, that we've seen Kendrick Breedlove and Montana Warren really doing a lot of split reps with the first team, second team defense at that nickel corner spot. I think Brian Ward feels pretty comfortable with both of these guys playing nickel corner this year. And they both had really good camps. I think that's why you see them listed as oars. And I wouldn't expect that to change after the first game against NAU, to be honest with you.
Wrapping things up here over on special teams, of course, Jesus Gomez getting the nod as your starting kicker. Canyon Floyd or Matt McKenzie as your punter. Long snapper, Kay Davis or Tyler Wigglesworth. And then kick return, Raleek Brown or Jalen Moss. And punt return, Raleek Brown or Jalen Moss. How do you feel about the Raleek Brown experience on punt and kick return?
I love it, man. Again, we've seen both those guys along with Corey Butler and Jaren Hamilton working in some of the return positions in practice. And again, anytime you can get some of your playmakers with the football in open space like you will be able to on special teams this year with Raleek Brown or Jalen Moss, I think that is only going to mean good things for this Arizona State football team, especially when we're talking about maybe giving this offense some short fields every now and then with a Raleek Brown kickoff return or punt return. Again, we've been talking for the last couple of weeks. Maybe we see a Raleek Brown opening kickoff for a touchdown. We'll see. But at the end of the day, I think the ASU special teams unit is arguably the most improved unit, top to bottom, anywhere on this team.
Yeah, super exciting stuff. Let us know what your biggest takeaway was from the first ever official depth chart for the number 11 team in the country, ASU, down in the comments.